down below. Ooh, yeah, yeah.
Hi, this is Senseilue, your 7-minute sensei, here at Sutter's Fort in Sacramento, California. It was this fort in 1839 to 1849 that it was very active in greeting the immigrants coming to the state of California. It was not a state at the time, it was a territory of Mexico. So eventually though, as you know, with the news of gold in the area, the fort did host many families and settlers in the area who were interested in looking for gold. It's a beautiful day here in Sacramento, and I hope to be able to provide you some more history and more context of the westward expansion to California.
Right. Hello everyone, I'm Mark here at Sutter's Fort State Historic Park. I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview of just the context of our site and the history of here. So our museum is constructed around the oldest permanent structure in the entire Central Valley of California. If you can see it right behind me, that building has been here since 1841. The rest of the fort walls were reconstructed in the 1890s. So these are historic, but that's historic-er, as I like to say, and it has some California significance, but I'll get into that in a little bit. Now, John Sutter, the man who constructed this fort, he arrived to California in a rather circuitous way. So he arrived to New York City. He came by ship from Europe. He made his way across the Midwest, trading and participating in various businesses, and then eventually made it to where about Oregon is today. Now from Oregon, he sails over to Hawaii. From Hawaii, he sails over to Sitka, Alaska, and then he finally makes his way down to Mexican California, where he obtains a land grant from the Mexican governor. He obtained about 48,000 acres of the Central Valley, and that was all centered around this site right here. Now, this land was not just his land, though. It was inhabited by people and still is inhabited by people for thousands of years since time immemorial, before time was ever even recorded. This is the ancestral homeland of the Nisenan, the Miwok, and the Maidu Native people. In this area, specifically the greater Sacramento area, there were 30 villages. That was because there are two major rivers that confluence here, so the Sacramento and the American River. This was a very fruitful and beautiful place to live, and the way of life stayed rather similar until change was brought here to the Central Valley. One of the big things we like to talk about is that this area is full of oak trees. 80% of the indigenous diet was acorn from oak trees. If you look behind me, I have an oak right here. These guys grow for hundreds of years. The valley oaks in this area can get up to 600 years old, and they're planted by the indigenous people in literal cultural orchards. So they knew the rotation of the seasons, they knew what trees would be fruitful. But when John Sutter arrives, if you want to build a permanent structure, if you want to have land for growing wheat, if you want to have land to raise cattle, you start clearing trees. Now that little ripple effect starts to change the way the indigenous people have to live. Now John Sutter is very fruitful in producing goods here. His main exports are going to be hides from cows and tallow, as well as flour and wheat. Now, he's very fruitful in this up until 1846, when the Bear Flag Revolt happens and California becomes an independent nation from Mexico for all of about 4 weeks or so. After that happens, the United States government comes over here and starts to occupy California, and we're in some kind of a weird limbo state because we're no longer part of Mexico, but we're not yet part of the United States. We're not a territory and we're not a state. So John Sutter thinks to himself, okay, people are coming over here. I am the end of the California Trail. People are going to continue to come over here. I'm going to build myself a town. I'm going to call it Sutterville. Now, Sutterville never gets constructed, though, because while they're building the sawmill about 45 miles east of here on the South Fork of the American River, James Marshall, the man who was building the sawmill for him, discovers 3 small little pieces of gold about the size of the tip of your pinky. Now, when he gets that gold, he brings it down here to Sutter's Fort on January 28th, 1848, into the central building right behind me. That's what I said, it has California significance. One of the most catalyzing conversations in California history happened in John Sutter's office. Now, There is a note in the New Helvetia Diary saying James Marshall has some very important business, but John Sutter didn't really want to capitalize on gold discovery. He didn't send anyone to go mining. He didn't go explore out there. He said, I'm building a town. I have plenty of money, plenty of workers. If the workers want to go look for gold, that's okay, as long as my sawmill gets built and my town gets started. But why would you work for John Sutter for 10, 15 cents a day when I can go discover gold? So gold fever starts to spread around California and people start to trade with gold. On the south side of the fort, there was a store owned by a man named Sam Brandon. He was one of the first Mormon immigrants to California. He brought several businesses into California. He also produced one of California's very first newspapers. Now, what a headline that would be, right? Gold discovery in the American River. But before he does that, he purchases all the military surplus that happened during the occupation of California by the United States government. So he buys all the shovels, all the pickaxes, all the pairs of boots, all the pants, all the shirts, everything somebody who was going to go mining could use. And then he gets himself a little jar full of gold, and he's literally in the streets when he produces that newspaper. Gold is found in the American River. He's showing people a little jar. He's waving the newspaper around, telling people exactly where to go, and he says all you need to do is head for the gold fields. But before you go, you want to buy a newspaper, you want to buy yourself a shovel, you need a pickaxe, you need a pair of boots, and he quickly becomes California's first millionaire. And then gold is truly advertised across the state. And then eventually the President of the United States, by the end of the year 1848, President Polk announces to Congress gold is confirmed found in California, and 80,000 people pick up and are headed right here to Sutter's Fort at the end of the California Trail. Now, eventually, John Sutter starts to realize people aren't respecting his land grant anymore because this is no longer Mexico. People aren't working for him because no one wants to work when you can go search for gold. So he starts to sell the individual room slots in the fort. And then the people who buy those slots think, well, why am I going to be here when people are arriving? They get off the boats where the confluence of the American and Sacramento River are. So they start to tear the fort apart and take those building materials and build on the riverfront, leaving that building by itself. And by 1860, that building's starting to fall apart too. So they're going to tear it down. The city of Sacramento is truly coming to fruition. They're going to tear it down and build 27th Street through our site. But a group got together known as the Native Sons of the Golden West. They purchased the parks property. They donated it to the state of California, and then the state reconstructed the fort that you see around you. So we were California's very first formal history museum because of this, and we are able to maintain that building right here in the center of the city. So it's interesting to think that in urban midtown Sacramento today, you have all the context for the California Gold Rush, you have all the context for the change of indigenous people's lives in California, and then you have the spark of what is the capital city of California. That's all I got for you. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you come visit us one day.
Ooh, yeah, yeah. We packed up the wagon and kissed the shore goodbye, rolling on wheels, chasing that western sky. Mama said, hold tight, there's a dream out there with the wind in our sails and sun in our hair. We're heading west where the rivers shine, gold in our hearts, not just in the minds. It's a brand new world and we're feeling blessed. Yeah, we'll find our dream out west. Ba, ba, ba. Find it out west. They say there's gold in them hills so high, but we're looking for more than what money can buy. A little house in peace, a song to sing, freedom, hope, and a wedding ring. Ooh, the dust may blow and the nights get cold, but we're rich in love and stories told. It ain't about the metal we find, it's the promise that's burning in our minds. We're heading west where the sky guide in time